Jurak Classic Whole Body Tonic is a dietary supplement, not a drug. Therefore, it is useful to affect the structure and/or function of your body in various ways, but it is not intended to and will not cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent any disease. Individual testimonials may not be everyone's experience and do not constitute scientific evidence. Jurak Corporation does not make any drug or treatment claims for its product.
They'd call me the Tonic Man, everyone, and I guess maybe I probably inherited that name over the many years that I have personally been drinking the JC Tonic. Of course, this story, as it actually started when my father, Carl Jurak, was born in 1904. Because what happened was really probably miraculous. Over all these years, we are still here. We are still saving lives. Imagine, what product is out there that can say it's been doing that for over... The story of my father is a long one, and I usually tell folks, do you want the 2-minute story or you want the 400-hour story? Because if I tell you every single part of it, every anecdote, every piece of it from the beginning when he was born onward, what I know, of course, of what he went through when he was growing up. I wasn't there, but he told me many stories. But if I told you everything in detail, it will take an awful long time. And so we want to do that because there are so many interesting, funny, and serious things that happened to him through his life. For example, an automobile. He actually developed and he was going to start manufacturing them in 1947. I mean, when you look at the car, and you look at a car today, a small car, it looked every bit as modern as the cars of today. And here he was thinking about things like that all his life, trying to make things better for people. Because after the war, he thought everyone could have a small car, inexpensive, not costing much to run, not costing much to buy. And that's what prompted him to do it. As with the tonic, we call it JC Tonic today, but that's because we shortened it from Jurak Classic Whole Body Tonic. Jurak Classic because we called it after my father, Jurak. Classic because I think after a certain number of years when something is around, like a classic car, it becomes classic. So this really is and was a classic product. It's a classy product as well, if I can throw that little one in there. But folks, he started thinking about this when he was 14. And the reason he started thinking about this when he was 14 is because he lived in Austria in those days, and he and his pals, they used to go to this diving hole where they would climb up the side of the mountain, the cliff, and they would dive in from different levels. And so they were always daring each other who is going to go higher and dive from higher. So they all went, and finally everybody went to the next level and so on. I don't remember now in meters what it was. I think he said 112 feet it came to, the top of it. And no one ever wanted to go until one day he took the dare. They were diving from 80 feet and everybody was fine. But when he dove that day from the 112-foot level, he hit the water so hard that he broke both of his eardrums. So here he was 14 with no eardrums, totally deaf, and he buried himself into books. And so he started really learning high education when he was 14. And by the time he was 18 or 19, I mean, he was a plant specialist. I mean, he knew so much about plants. And during those years when he could not hear, well, he used to go on the estates, on the farms, where the farmers were, and look at the livestock and look at the plants and look at the gardens and study this and study that and so on. And I remember him telling me the only test he ever did was with a couple of big hogs. And I'll tell you that story maybe another time. But he went through this study of plants till he became really an expert. And then he started mountain climbing with his pals. And he had started to develop hearing through the bone in the back of his neck. And I remember him when I was a youngster. We lived in Quebec City, and we used to go to the lake to swim. And he always put earplugs in his ears. And I never knew why. I mean, he would do it. It was done. Who would ask? I mean, why was anyone to ask? He just said, well, I need them. He never told that story then, and he never told it for many years. I only learned about it probably in my 20s when I used to drive with him to my little cosmetic laboratory, and he helped me formulate products. And we used to talk a lot in the car driving up to the north end of Montreal. It was about an hour drive or so, and so we had plenty of time to talk. And that's when I picked his brain, and that's when I learned everything I know about this preparation. And so he told me that story one time, and I just could not understand, and no one really could understand, but he started to hear as well as anyone. So that is just one little aspect of early on. He told me, of course, in 1914, when World War I broke out, well, he was 10 years old. So he experienced it. He saw it. And when the Germans came down through the countryside of any country they moved through, they would confiscate anything and everything they could, all the foodstuffs, all the animals, everything. So he told me, he said, when they knew they were coming closer and closer, he and his family and everybody, all the hands, they were out there on the grounds digging huge trenches, and they slaughtered all the animals, and they covered them in grease, and they buried them. I mean, this was the only way they were going to be able to have food through what ended up to be a lot worse than anybody ever imagined. So he and his family lived pretty good, okay, and he went through it okay, and he went to school, and he studied more, and, of course, he concentrated on the plant kingdom. And when he was going to school later on, he started mountain climbing with his pals. And one day he had a very sharp shortage of breath, and he thought, wow, if I lose my breath and my wind, whatever, I'm going to fall, everybody's going to be pulled down. So that was what prompted him to start looking at what could he find in the plant kingdom to actually counteract what he was going through. And sure enough, he started working on it, this plant, that plant. Now, I don't know about then, but today, folks, we use about 6,000 different plants in the world. In those days, probably not 6,000. Hey, maybe more. Who knows? But a lot of plants were used. Everyone was using them. That's how medicine was practiced. And, of course, he looked in the plant kingdom, and he started analyzing and dissecting and checking in the molecular chain and what they were composed of, and on and on and on. Well, the work certainly was laborious and time-consuming, so he did it in his spare time whenever he was not in school. And he continued to look at everything until he started to realize that there are some certain kind of plants that all are not the same. Everybody thinks in the plant kingdom they're all the same. They're not. And that, as those of you who already know the JC Tonic story, those super herbs are referred to today as tonic herbs. They were referred to as tonic herbs in those days, but today people think tonic means maybe liquid, but it's not. It is really based on the fact that these plants had two sets of constituents. One set would push the systems in one direction, one in the other direction. And that's when he thought in those days, imagine, at that age, he was starting to think, well, if I could find some of these plants, and some do this, and some do that, and some affect this, and some affect that, how about if I can find enough to affect the whole body? And that's when was born the idea of the whole body approach. Because even at his young age, he knew darn well the whole deal in a body is everything is interrelated. Every part of the body is dependent on the other in some which way. All connected through the bloodstream. So that's what he concentrated on. How do we keep the blood healthy? If it's not healthy, how do we clean it up? how do we make it super blood so that it affects all of the systems and everything in the body in such a way that it will keep you in much better shape for much longer. Look, he knew, as we all know today, we're all dying. It doesn't matter who we are. I mean, our bodies are dying little by little every day because that's due to the way we live, what we eat, stress, and all the rest of it. We do age, some faster than others, and some slower because their health or their body has more stamina, is able to stand up to it. But he knew that if he could find something in that area, he could probably put something together. And so he started testing it with his friends. Every time he made a little batch of something and a test in his lab, he'd say, hey, try this, try that, and they'd all take a few shots, and some got a buzz of energy, some nothing much, and so on. And he continued to work on it to perfect it. Well, he was not doing that full time. So that job of his lasted just about 20 years, because when he started, it was about 1922 when he started this project and thinking he could do it. But in 1926, guess what? He got married to my mother, Helena. And guess what? They decided to go to Canada for their honeymoon. Well, my mother was all excited, but I don't know today if she really knew or not. He had gotten a mandate from the Agricultural Department of Canada to come over and work on the lands out in Saskatchewan. So they arrived on a boat, took a train, went out west, and all during these years, he continued to work on his preparation, as he called it. Well, that was fine because it was part-time, and he had no real reason for doing it other than he wanted to do it and make it available for people. But he was not on a timetable to make it and start a business. I mean, the business that he started, which he finally he started making it commercially available in 1943, and he actually formed a company in 1945 to market it. At a meeting of some distributors in one part of the province of Quebec, he was like exactly what we do today. We have meetings and share the product and share the opportunity and so on, and that's what he was doing. Imagine he was doing that starting in about, 1945, I think, 44, 45. We have pictures where the date is marked right on the picture, 45, 46, and so on. And there are some letters that were written to him, testimonials sent to him. We still have them on their original paper that was dated in the 40s and 50s, and they're attesting to the fact that this preparation that my father was marketing at the time was miraculous, plain and simple. Now, they did not have any rules and regulations as we have today, so people were just saying what happened. If they no longer had this, they would say, I no longer had that, and they wrote those letters to say so. And the fact of the matter is that more and more people were getting more and more results, and it was expanding more and more. And as a matter of fact, I was, in 1947, that was about 2 years after my dad had started the business as a real business. He started making it commercially available in 1943, but he created his company in 45, and he started keeping sort of records. And we have some of those records. As a matter of fact, I have the original book where they kept the sales per month of how many bottles they sold, and he was selling it for about, I think, $5.95 a bottle. Well, if you go to the internet and ask it, what is $5.95 a bottle worth in today's money, it's about $70, which is about $60, which is what we charge. So we've only increased the price in terms of the change in the value of money over those years. And this product is still doing exactly the same thing today as it was then. So how did all of this really affect anything about today and this story that I want to tell you? Well, in 1960, my father came home from his lab, and he found my mother lying in the bathtub. She had slipped, hit her head, and was in a coma. So he rushed her to the hospital, and she was in a coma for a while, and then she woke up, and she seemed to be fine, but had tremendous pain. So they said, we're going to just squeeze the artery a little bit and slow the blood flow to the brain, and it'll heal itself. But it was rudimentary in those days. They didn't have the kind of equipment and knowledge that they have today to do those kind of things, and they clipped the blood too long. She had a lack of oxygen, went into a permanent coma. So for 7 months, he went and spent 11 hours a day at her bedside trying to get her to talk. And he just totally disregarded his business. And it just collapsed upon itself, and it stopped. So I picked up some parts and pieces that I thought, one day I'm going to remarket this. And he told me, I was going to school then, and he said, look, son, go to school, get a good education, get a good job, never mind this. But I picked up papers and pieces and the formula and labels and some of the even products, because he not only had the tonic, he was making about 40 other tonic herb products. He had organ-specific ones for the liver, for this, for that, for the eyes. He had all kinds of things that he was marketing. As a matter of fact, in 1950, he decided that people need a good multivitamin. Because at the time, you could buy some vitamin C, maybe a little bit of other vitamins. Vitamin E in Canada, at least at the time, was illegal to sell. They had a rule, a law against it, even though he knew that it was really good for the heart. So he started to put together a vitamin mineral supplement. And I remember standing looking at the pile of boxes that he had ready for sale in his warehouse. I don't know, 1950. I was born in 37, so whatever it was. And I'm standing there, and it's a mountain. And it was there every day and every month, and finally for a year. And I didn't understand. But I found out later, when I grew up, he couldn't sell it because no one understood what a multiple vitamin is or was for. It was a hard job to sell. So he was always 30, 40, 50 years ahead of himself. And so I'm looking at this and I'm wondering what's going on. Well, I mean, I don't know how much money he lost on that. Thankfully, he was selling a lot of JC, at the time, the preparation, and he was doing quite well. As a matter of fact, he was doing so well that it was money from that funded the manufacturing of the car. But we have so much to tell you, and this story could go on for hours every Sunday, which I don't want to do that. And also, another thing that we did not think of asking you, but we will ask you right now, if any of you have questions as you hear these calls, email them into us, and we will make sure we put them into the story and address them and answer those questions. Because I'm sure you're going to have tons of questions that we will never even think of covering in that story. The story also was already publicized on our website 10 years ago or so, and we called it The History, and there was 7 parts, and we've taken it down, and we are re-looking at it, and we'll be putting it back up onto the website in the next 3 months. And that part also covers, for example, when he and my mom left. They were on a train from. They got on the boat. They got to Halifax. They got on a train, went out to Saskatchewan, some one-horse town somewhere. The experience that he had only there every day. He would say, "Your mother kept saying, let's go back to the old country. This is uncivilized out here." Well, my dad could see what was going to happen in Europe. He could see the breakup coming. Already in 1926, when they left, he could see that there was a lot of unrest and it wasn't looking good. Because he had a knack of seeing things and understanding things well before they happened. As I said, with his vitamin mineral supplement, way ahead of his time. No one understood the concept. This preparation that you are all using, or that a lot of you will start using, is another example. He really was light years ahead of his time. And actually, this isn't so amazing. Through all the years, I did not know that this was a tonic herb formula, and it worked because of those tonic herbs. I just thought it worked. I didn't know why. And I never asked why. Why would I ask why as I'm growing up? Why does this work, Dad? I just took it for granted. We had a great life. He actually made his first lab in the basement in our house. Norman and I, my brother and I, we had a great playroom. He commandeered the playroom and made it into the production facility. And the 2 garages were turned into packaging and shipping. And we smelled these wonderful herbs permeating up through the house all the time. And it was great. And why would I be asking questions? I really only started to ask questions much later on. So that was the story, and there's much more to it that I will fill in as we go through. But by 1960, it was like a thing of the past. And it was going to end. But I put these things away, and I always continued to make small batches for myself and my friends and my family. And I had a number of people, friends, that I was giving it to, and they were feeling great and looking younger, feeling better as the years went by. So from the early 60s, I started my little business in 1965. So I continued making these batches, and as I made them, with the remnants of the inventory that was left of raw materials, as I could see things start to get lower and lower, one of the botanicals gets less and less, I started putting less in it. Then I'd put a little bit less in, and then finally at some point, I didn't even have, after 1970, the stockpiles were going down pretty fast. So I changed a number of things. And for me and the people I was giving it to, we were not trying to get anybody into better health. Everybody was in pretty good health. We wanted to stay that way, and the energy we had and the focus and the brain power and all those kind of things kicked in. And so it didn't matter if it was a little less of this, a little more of that, and so on. But, I thought in my mind, I'm going to market this. In 1965, or about probably by 68, I decided I'm going to do a mail order with it. Well, I just blew my brains out. It didn't work. So I put it on the shelf again, continued making the little batches for myself and friends and so on. And I always carried a jug of it around in my car. And whoever I met, I'd always say, you ought to try this. And everybody would take a little shot, and they'd just about spit it out. But some of them said, wow, what does it do? And I would explain it to them. So as long as I gave it to them, they would drink it. So I continued making 5 gallons at a time, and I'd put it in little bottles and pass it around and so on. And I did that in 1970 with a friend of mine who had a very, very large drugstore right in the downtown Montreal, in the Sheraton Hotel. And I gave him a bottle. He said, what is this, snake oil? I said, yeah, try it. He couldn't believe what it did. He said, this is amazing. He said, I could sell this. Make me some. And I thought, this is it. We're back on the market. Watch and see. This will be the beginning again. And so I made about 4 or 5 dozen. We put them in a 16-ounce bottle because he said, don't want a big bottle, make a small bottle. I have a lot of people from out of town. They want to travel. They'll put it in their pocket. And he told me what to do. So we put it in a 16-ounce bottle. And I delivered this. And a couple of weeks later, I said, how many more do you want? He said, well, they're still on the shelf. I've only sold 2 bottles. I said, what happened? Well, he said, I didn't realize it. You have to tell people what this does because they don't know and no one understands. And that's exactly why we're doing this business today through network marketing, folks, because that's exactly what we all do. We tell people why, how, and what to look out for and so on, because no one knows. And today, even in America, 90% of the population do not have a clue what a tonic herb is. So here I'm doing this, and that didn't work, so I finally decided that's it. But I always, in my heart of hearts, thought, how could I ever get this on the market? And here there's a fellow I know that is telling me he's got some kind of a rash every fall on his hands, urticaria. And I said, you ought to try this stuff that I make. And he said, what is it? And I told him. And so he drank it, and in no time it was gone. And in the following year, he never got it again. So he said, we could market this. I said, I'd love to. I said, I've always wanted to market it. I've tried a few times, but I said, forget it. There's no way. Well, he said, I heard about this thing called MLM. I said, what is it? Well, he said, it's some kind of sales. He said, I don't know what it is. So here we decide we're going to look into it and do it. And because we decided to do that, this is in 1983. My father is 79 years old. All he's talking about, he says, I've done my part on this world. He said, I'm ready for the next one. He said, when they want to take me, I'm ready. I said, oh, Dad, for Pete's sakes, And then I told him we're going to market the preparation, and he said, what? I said, we're going to market the preparation. He said, you guys are nuts. I said, we could be. We probably are. Well, he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. He said, what do you mean you don't know? I said, we don't know what we're doing. We're just thinking we're going to market it, and there's some new kind of system called network marketing. Well, he said, that's sort of what I was doing, network marketing, because that's what he was doing. He had distributors paying commissions, and it was a one-on-one situation, and get the product known, and then people would talk about it and have meetings and so on. So he said, okay, so what do you want me to do? Well, I said, I don't know what I want you to do. I just want to know if you want to help us. Well, he said, well, okay, but what do you want me to do? I said, I don't know, maybe. He said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know yet what I'm going to do. But I said, how about if we have a meeting, and we call some people together, and you actually get up and tell the story, how it started, where it came from, and all the rest. He said, okay. So this fellow that I decided to do the business with called 123 people. And the 123 people all promised to be there at the meeting, but 4 turned up. So there's me, and there's him, and there's my dad, and we actually hired a distributor from Herbalife to come in and explain the marketing plan, because the marketing plan that I used was a copy of the Herbalife one, because we didn't know how to make a marketing plan, because we didn't know what a marketing plan was. But I said, look, if it's good enough for, General Bull Moose, it's good enough for us. So we used it, and we hired a Herbalife distributor to come in just when we wanted to explain the compensation plan. He'd come in the back door, he'd tell he explained how it worked, and he left. So that night, we have 4 people. We had to maybe tie them up to get them to buy their first bottle, but they each bought a bottle. And we thought we were really, really, really successful. Imagine we had 100% of all the guests buying a bottle. And so we went out and celebrated. And we thought, what are we going to do next? And the only thing we could think of was, let's do another meeting. And to make it short, I will tell you that the next week, the 4 people came. And we decided to do it again. And the next week, 5 people came. And then 8 people, and we just continued nonstop to do it again, no matter what. We said, no matter who comes, what they say, anything, we are committed to do a meeting every week at the same time, same place. Well, we did that, and about 8 years later, we were in the Anaheim Convention Center, and there was 10,000 people who came to hear the story. And my father was still up on stage telling the story. And the story he told was exactly how he developed this, starting in 1922 and slowly. And so that company, the way we did it, we ended up selling the product for probably about $800 million worth of it over maybe 10 years, maybe a little less than 10 years. And that product was the product that I was making in my little lab, where I continuously put less of this in until I had none left. Then I didn't put it in. Then I took another herb that my dad was using in some other product, and I put it in, and so on. And so the product became a different product. But you know what? It was pretty darn good. And we had a lot of great results. And my father is all the while telling his story about his preparation, never knowing that I had changed the formula. I never told anybody because there was no need to. I wasn't in business. I was giving it. I wasn't selling it. I mean, if they wanted to use it, they're welcome to use it. If they got results, that's great. If they didn't, they just didn't have to take it. It was free. And so I continued to make it my way, which was whenever I was missing something, I'd put less in, or if I didn't have any left, I would put something else in. And guess what? People still said, hey, it's pretty good. So it ended up to be a pretty good product. And we ended up, when we decided to market it, calling it a potassium mineral supplement. Because I still at that time did not know about the tonic herb concept. I only learned about it in 1997. Imagine, 1997, when I met Dr. Daniel Mowry, and I had a chance to meet him on the phone, and I said, I think I have something called a tonic formula, whole body, and he said, no, you don't. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm sure. He said, you can't. I said, what do you mean? He says, no one knows about that. Well, I said, my father knew an awful lot of things, and I kid you not. I mean, I have to think it is. Can I share some of it with you and you tell me? And he said, sure. And so you see his comments on our website where he lists what a whole body tonic has to have in it and about it in order to be considered a whole body tonic. And he was frankly flabbergasted when he learned what exactly I had. He said, among other things, he wrote me about a 2-page letter back there in 98, and he said, among other things, I just could not come to grips with the fact that here was a man in North America who knew about this tonic herb concept so long ago. Because I told him my dad was doing it in the 40s, So that story, of course, ended up being the reason why we sold so much of that product, because my dad was out on these meetings. There was 1,500, 2,000, 3,500 people in a room. It just went on and on and on. And the product was performing very, very well, even though it was not the original preparation of my father. Now, my father had his original preparation that he was making for people, and he was making in his own company in the 40s and 50s. And, well, as the testimonial letter that you have on our website shows, the stories are just like not to be believed. Now, the other product, which happened to be called Matol, because that was my father's company's name in 1945, Matol Research Limited. And so I just took the name and I called it Matol. And we ended up calling it KM in the United States because we were stopped from shipping it from Canada into the U.S., so we had to make a new one called something else. So we called it KM. K for potassium, M for mineral. It was a potassium mineral supplement. Thought about that coming back from the FDA in Washington one day with my partner on the plane. The guy told us, he said, change the name, you should be okay. So we decided on the plane what to call it. KM, it came up. Everything we did was by the seat of our pants, because I thought that day when we launched our company in October of 1984, I was absolutely sure that in 3 weeks we'd be out of business. I was absolutely sure that who's going to buy it. We had a bottle, the only bottle I could get my hands on quickly was a plastic oil bottle for motor oil. So I bought 300 of those bottles, made a little batch, filled them up, slapped the label on, and that was our first bottle. Well, when you'd hold it and open the cap, it would drip out the top and down your sleeve. It was black as the ace of spades, and it tasted like, woo, it was really bad compared to today. And still, people drank it because they had these incredible results. And those results that my dad had throughout those years just grew and grew and grew. And when we started the Mattol company in 1984, well, that particular product was pretty darn good. Now, if we had have had the original one, then I would not be on this call tonight, because there would be no such thing as JC Tonic. So maybe the big guy up above had his hand in it after all. He must have had his hand in it to guide my father to make it and to come up with the idea. And he certainly has had his hand in it when you think of the tens of thousands of people who are alive today because of it. Because as you know yourselves, maybe from your own experience, and from many, many people that you speak to, people are withering away in terrible health, taking all kinds of medication. Nothing is happening. Everything is going wrong. The secondary effects, the side effects are horrendous. It goes on and on and on. And as soon as any of them, no matter what their health challenge is, starts drinking of this elixir, things start to change. I conceived of the idea to launch the Jurak Classic Whole Body Tonic in 1997. That alone, what a story we've got there. Holy cow. All of it is interwoven and intertwined with my dad, because everything that has happened has been because of that and because of him. And if he had not have been around still when we started, and we didn't have him telling the story, I could not have even told the story, because I didn't know what the story was. The very first meeting we had in Montreal that day in 1984 with those 4 people is the very, very first time I ever heard the story. So let me tell you, folks, there is a lot more to this than meets the eye. And as they say, the rest is history. Wow. You know, folks, we have a lot of episodes to bring to you, and we will do so each week. But this week, we have a little surprise for you. And, of course, my best surprise of all is my pal Betty is on the line, as she is quite often helping out to get this call organized and out to you. And she has some great information. Betty, it's all yours.
Hi, Anthony. How you doing tonight?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. You're on fire again with your beautiful stories about your dad. I just love hearing about him all the time. And I always learn something new, that's for sure.
There's plenty more to come.
Yeah, I know. I know there's more to come. One thing I wanted to mention, because I became involved in 1989 with your first company, Mattol, and the gentleman who sponsored me, he was, I think, at your very second meeting. So maybe at that meeting there were 8 people. And
he was at the second meeting?
The second meeting, yep, in Montreal.
Really?
Yeah, and or in Toronto, excuse me. He was from Toronto.
Because we started doing meetings first in Montreal for the better part of the year.
Okay.
I think it was every Tuesday night, and then we ended up going to Toronto every Monday, I think, or every Wednesday.
Well, he was in a church basement in Toronto.
Yeah, that was it, church basement, yeah.
And anyway, the girl who brought him there, she had been on the product, and she had had amazing results, and she wanted him to come and meet your dad and meet all you guys. And he was very, very impressed, and he actually bought a case of product. And I believe he said that he had written a check, and the check was a bad check. He had to end up coming back and paying you for it. But anyway, he went off with his case of product, and he ended up selling one of the bottles to somebody who took off with it, like absolutely took off as a superstar with this product. And when he first bought that first case with the bad check, he was on welfare, living by himself, recently divorced. And he went in 1 year from being on welfare to becoming a millionaire. And he was the leader in Toronto. We used to go to all his big, big meetings because his story was incredible. But he had sponsored this one person who just took off with it. And I always used to think that, I used to think, wow, not that I was that business-oriented. I mean, I'm 90% product. But I always used to think, it's better than playing the lottery, because if I get a person whose life is going to change so drastically that they're going to run away with this product and be telling the world, maybe one day I'll be a millionaire. Well, I'm not a millionaire, that's for sure, and I do work very hard. But I've touched a lot of lives, I've helped a lot of people, and I do make a pretty good income. And who knows, what the future holds. But a couple of weeks ago, you said on the call when you're introducing me that I call hundreds of people a week, and I actually don't call hundreds. If there's a special on, I'll get on the phones because I'm really excited, and I'll tell a lot of people, obviously. But, I some days I don't work at all, so I don't want people to be scared off thinking, we got to do like Betty does and call all these people. Because I take a lot of days off. I am retired, but I love doing the JC Tonic business. But, on some days I will call 40, 50 people and tell them, this, that, or the other thing. Today I must have called maybe 40 or 50 people. I like calling people on the weekends because they're usually home, and then we get to chit-chat a little bit more. But now, because we have another special, because Anthony likes to play Santa Claus every once in a while, more often than not.
Well, Christmas in July.
Exactly, yeah. So, and you're very generous like that. Far too generous, I think, but it's okay.
Okay, never mind. We don't have to offer it.
Yeah, well, no, we'll offer it. You had me on the call to offer it, so I'm going to offer it. So if anybody wants to participate, and I know there's a lot of you out there who have amazing stories, so if you'd like to come on, and it doesn't have to be live on a Sunday evening. We can tape it any time during the week. We love you to tell your success story so everybody can listen, everybody can benefit. And if you do that for us, the next time you would order your next order, Anthony's going to send you a free bottle. So what a great incentive. You can keep that bottle for yourselves or give it away to someone who's really suffering and needs it. But all you have to do is tell your story and just think how many other people you'll help, and you'll also get a free bottle next time you order. So
and the person, folks, you can then use that call to play for people. When you're talking to somebody about the JC Tonic, you don't have to go off for 20 minutes. Just say, hey, listen to this, and they hear your call and they get more excited because you were on a call, and so it's a great tool to introduce.
I use my call. We did all the time.
Pardon?
We did a call with my story, I guess about a month ago now, and I get that out to people all the time, and they really enjoy it.
That's right, and you send it out to people.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. But yeah, it's a great opportunity.
What do they do? Just phone the 800?
If they want to set up a meeting with you, just call the 1-800 number. You can ask for Betty, and I'll give you a call back, and then we'll set up a good time for you and for Anthony to get together. 15, 20 minutes. It's not a lot out of anything.
That's right, and you can book it at any time you want, folks. It doesn't matter what's good, morning, noon, or night. We plug those appointments in on a calendar. So if you say you can do it 2 weeks from today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then we do that,
Yep. And we still have, right, Anthony, the 4 bottles of Helena, the 4-ounce for $75?
We do, and I just got the inventory report. It's dwindling quickly. There's not very much left.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've had a lot of orders this week for that since we announced it last week. So,
and that, folks, we're doing that to get rid of that bottle we have and the pump. It wasn't too successful, and we're getting a better pump and a better bottle and so on. So once it's in stock, it'll go back to the original prices.
Yeah, so it's a great deal. So take advantage of it, everybody, and get on the phones, get your free bottle, and help more people, help more animals, and it'll be well worth it, believe me.
Help this old world of ours. Okay, so next week we'll have another episode. You know, as I go through these thought processes, I mean, the things come to me like I'm in a field of meteorites. I mean, they're just coming at me, the stories, and I think of, there's this and there's that and so on. So it might sound a little disjointed here and there, but there's a method to my madness, okay? So come on down next week and enjoy the call again and get the rest of the history. When we've got them all done, we're putting something together, as I mentioned, for the website. We had a great history on an old website we had. We have to redo it, and we're going to get it up there. So, all right?
Oh, thank you.
So, Betty, thank you so much for coming in and telling us that little nugget, and appreciate that. And, folks, see you next week. Don't forget, take an ounce and feel the bounce.